All right, chapter talk covering chapter 3. I'm actually going to record this in 2 parts. Our first recording will cover our number 1 objective, making business messages concise, clear, and readable. And then the second of 2 recordings will cover identifying proofreading problem areas and evaluating messages for effectiveness. Okay, so let's do it. Our first learning objective. The first thing we need to consider is the phases of the writing process. Now, if you are looking in your textbook in chapter 3, you are going to see this image. Our text advocates a 3x3 writing process. So specifically, we are working in phase 1 here, which is pre-writing. So this is the thought work that happens before a single key is touched, okay? We're identifying the purpose, and we're also profiling who is the receiver. What is most important to them? We're anticipating their needs. So what we're doing here is we're taking the concept we discussed last week in chapter 2, and now we're applying it. We're thinking about that with them. What's in it for me? What are the needs of my reader? And how do I underscore and emphasize that? Okay, so let's talk pre-writing. As just mentioned, in the pre-writing phase, we're analyzing, we're thinking about our audience, we're anticipating their needs, and we then are adapting our message accordingly. Now, a very simple way that I teach to this subject of pre-writing is to think birthday party invitation. Now, think back when you were a child. When that birthday party invitation came home, oh man, that was so exciting. Even better if it arrived in the mail. The items on a birthday party invite are simple. They're the who, what, when, and where, and sometimes additional information. So being in the throes of the birthday party years, we just had a birthday party at Sky Zone with 10 eager little jumpers. That invitation said what time the party is, at what date, where to drop them off, what to bring, and then that additional item was that they needed to sign the jumping waiver. So now let's take the birthday party concept and think about that in terms of business writing. Let's stick to those basics. Let's let the reader know, need to know information only, okay? Analyze what's important to them, highlight the what's in it for me, and then adapt your message accordingly. So birthday party invitation, before you click send, make sure you've answered those key questions, the who, what, where, when, and any additional information. Because if you do not answer those questions, guess what? You're going to get a reply. And most often it comes in reply all form, friends. So we want to anticipate questions and answer them on the first draft. The next thing our text looks at is very simple, formal versus informal research. Now, you have been doing research throughout your collegiate and undergraduate work. Okay, informal research. This might be as simple as talking to someone, examining company files that are available to you, taking an informal survey, brainstorming. When I speak in an organization, I contact HR or whomever my contact is, and I talk to them. Tell me about the culture of your organization. What are their needs? Then I get online and read about what is commonly known about this organization, their mission statement, how many people they employ, where they are located. That is an example of informal research. That is necessary when we are writing or speaking to a new audience. Let's then contrast that with formal research. Now, this is still research, but this might be more what's the word I'm searching for? More specific, more analytical. If you think about a scientific experiment, or if you were to populate a survey for all employees across the company, and then you analyze that data and aggregated quantitative results or qualitative results, that would be formal research. Sometimes that is necessary in order to figure out how to best send your message. Oftentimes we can get by with the informal route. Okay, next thing we're going to do when we think about pre-writing, we need to look at the English language itself. And as you and I all know, Oftentimes the English language can be tricky. It can be confusing. Things do not read as they look phonetically. So we're going to look at 4 different types of sentences, okay? And we're doing this mainly because I want you to think about less is more as we go through this, okay? We're going to analyze sentence types, but most importantly, a clean, simple sentence will be comprehended. Our text advocates that sentences using 8 words or less have the highest level of comprehension, 100%. So knowing that, we want to strive for clean, simple sentences at work. Because again, that's the whole point. We're sending a message for information to be sent and received. So when we write simply, we only increase our comprehension chance. All right, so let's do it. First, we're going to look at simple sentences. Now, please enjoy my Shrek references here. A simple sentence, it's simple, right? One complete thought. There is a subject and there is a verb. So this example, the donkey had buck teeth, okay? So the subject is the donkey. The verb is had buck teeth. This is a simple sentence with one complete thought. We can read it at a glance and comprehend it. Simple sentences are beautiful in the workplace. Next up, we have complex sentences. Okay, a complex sentence contains a complete thought and then an add-on, a thought that cannot stand by itself. I like to refer to that as the rider because it's kind of hanging on to the complete thought for that additional information to make sense. So let's break down this sentence. The donkey had buck teeth and chewed loudly. Now notice our additional thought here, that rider, and chewed loudly. That makes sense because we have that simple, complete thought prior. The donkey had buck teeth and chewed loudly. So we have a complete thought, and then we have an additional thought that needs the complete thought for it to make sense. Okay, I'm going to jump ahead here for flow's sake. Next, let's look at a compound sentence. A compound sentence has 2 complete but related thoughts. Okay, so it's compound. So there's 2 complete thoughts, but they are related. The donkey had buck teeth and it had knobby knees. So you'll see this is compound because if we split this up, the donkey had buck teeth and it had knobby knees. So it had knobby knees is a complete thought on its own, but when we connect them, they make a compound sentence. Okay, so that is commonplace, simple, clean English that is advantageous to use at work because it's clean, simple, and makes sense. The last thing we're going to do in the first chapter talk is look at some common sentence faults. Okay, folks, we've all opened up an email or a text message and you just simply know it's going to take too much work to read through it and comprehend. So let's look at some common faults. The first is that of a fragment, okay? A fragment is an incomplete thought. So for example, in the car, with a brand new hat, running in the woods, singing a song, at the party. Those are thoughts, but they're not complete. So punctuation matters. If you read my meme to the right, read it in your head, notice how you're accenting those pauses with periods. So knowing this, we need to identify sentence fragments because oftentimes we can get by speaking with a sentence fragment. If my daughter says, "Mom, where's my softball helmet?" and I reply, "In the car," that makes sense. But if I simply just write "in the car," there's not complete context. So we need to be aware of sentence fragments. Let's just look at an example fragment. Let's look at the first one. Because most transactions require a permanent record, good writing skills are critical. Take a second and identify the fragment here. Okay, we have 2 incomplete thoughts. Let's revise that. Because most transactions require a permanent record, comma, good writing skills are critical. So what we did here is we had to revise and we had to add some additional and different punctuation to pull that idea together. Instead of 2 fragments, we have 1 complete thought. Now, please feel free to work through these other sentences. There's more in the textbook as well, but just for brevity in the chapter talk, I'll just give you one example. The next is that of a run-on. Oh my goodness, the tweet world. We are kings and queens of run-ons. Remember when you were little and your aunt's Christmas list was like thick socks and a bag of nice coffee, and you were like, that's a strange list. What her life may be. It's sad. Then you get older and you realize you know exactly how to live, right? This, my friends, is a run-on. Okay, so let's look at an example. Let's take the first one. Many job seekers prepare traditional resumes. Some also use digital portfolio websites. Now, this is not terrible by run-on standards, but you'll notice here how we have multiple thoughts combined without any punctuation to separate them. So let's revise that. Many job seekers prepare traditional resumes, period. Some also use digital portfolios. So notice how we had to split that up into two sentences and also add some additional language to tie those ideas together. Okay, next up, we need to identify the good old comma splice. Now, I always think about this when you see daycares walking to the park or on a field trip, they got them tethered, right? Why is that? Because if they're not tied together, they're going to run away. And a comma splice is very similar. A comma splice is using a comma, but rather we need stronger words and punctuation. So let's look at this example. Mac preferred his laptop computer, comma, Nadia preferred her tablet. So we have two complete thoughts there, but we're trying to tie them together with just one comma, and that is not strong enough. That's why it's called a comma splice. So here's a couple revisions. Mac preferred his desktop, comma, but Nadia preferred her tablet. So notice we still were able to use a comma, but when we added the word but, we strengthened that. A second option, Mac preferred his desktop, semicolon. Nadia preferred her tablet. Once again, we needed stronger punctuation to tie those two thoughts together. Okay, so the last thing we're going to look at as we wrap this up, just by way of repetition, why does this matter? Short sentences are always the best way to go in workplace communication. Now, the average sentence is probably about 20 words or more. We are aiming at using 20 words or less. And folks, I would even say we can do better than that. If we know an 8-word sentence has maximum comprehension, let's shoot for less. Less is always more in business writing. Okay, so we just reviewed various sentence issues, common sentence faults, right? We talked about run-ons, we talked about comma splices and sentence fragments. And then we looked at 4 different types of sentences: simple sentences, complex sentences, compound sentences, and compound complex sentences. Okay, so this wraps up the first part of the chapter 3 talk. Please watch now the second of 2 talks to complete the chapter.